Let's welcome the Right Honorable Chief Secretary, Mr. Farley Chavez Augustine, and he is here this morning. Good morning, and how are you, sir?
Good morning. I'm good to be here. I'm happy to be here. Good morning, Tobago. How are you going this morning?
You had a good Blue Food Festival? Or you there?
Yes.
With the umbrella?
Well, rain and Blue Food has become synonymous with each other. I mean, the car good dasheen without water, and to get the blue dasheen, it had to be in swamp-like conditions almost. So that goes with the territory.
Okay.
And I think what was a big plus this year is that we did some considerable work there on the ground, with some underground drains and so on, that allows for the water to drain off quickly.
Yes.
While at the same time preserving the environment, not trying to pave out the whole place and that kind of thing. And I think the patrons were pretty happy. Patrons stayed there in the rain, the umbrellas up and down and danced and so on. And I think next year, what we have to do next year is offer some raincoats.
Yes.
Instead of jerseys that mark Blue Food, we should probably put a raincoat as a signature garment. Of the Blue Food. But since I've known the Blue Food, we have always had rain.
Right. Since I've known the Blue Food, it's the first time I see permanent structures there. And I said to my colleague, money is well spent. Let's talk about the vision behind that. And
Sure.
Is there a figure for that construction of those booths? And, well, we know it's not finished, but they have to be painted and so on. But just an overview as to the vision behind having those permanent booths instead of the tents. And obviously, looking good, I said money well spent. So your thoughts on that?
So we did some consultation with the communities, primarily Lansome and Bloody Bay. We brought them together and met with them. The Blue Food was started by the residents of Lansome. So in many ways, I want the people of Lansome to feel as though they still own the festival. Because this festival was not started necessarily by the THA. It started with the Net family and the people of Lansome having this festival in the village, supported by the THA, of course. It got too big in the village of Lansome, and it was moved to where it is at present. In that consultation, a couple of things came out. One, a facility where anytime during the year you want Blue Food, you can go and get Blue Food. So it's not just a one-off festival thing. The festival is great, but if you are traversing the area, you should be able to get some Blue Food on an ordinary day. Especially if you're traversing the area on a weekend. Two, the villagers asked for an area that will be able to accommodate camping. So the facility will be able to accommodate camping and other festivals. So private promoters will be able to rent this space, so to speak, to have other festivals, but it will also be able to accommodate camping, which means that people will have access to kitchens, bathrooms, and so on, and they could pitch their tents and they could camp. The community also wants to do ATV tours. ATV tours up the river, along the margins of the rainforest. People could drive these dirt bikes and so on. And so from that location, we will have the ATV tours. Paintball is also a consideration. So we're now going through the approval phase, because to do paintball, you need permissions from Ministry of National Security and so on to import the equipment. But paintball will also be available from that location. And two other things will be added. There were three other things. One, the villagers and I spoke to Mr. Ned last night, Barrington Ned last night. The villagers and I will come together and we will locate a permanent dirt oven on site. We will also have a play park for the children in the area on site. And we'll also have a learning resource center on site. We have 68 households in Bloody Bay. Lansome is at 72, and that's at the last count. In Bloody Bay, the community center, there's some challenges. We were unable to repair it over the last 4 years because the community center was built on private lands. The owner died and the family was working out how they manage the estate, so that became a challenge. But the Learning Resource Center will allow for smart classrooms and teaching homework center and so on, and provide for the educational needs of the youngsters between the communities of Lansome and Bloody Bay primarily. We'll also accommodate the community of Palatavere there. So all of these things will happen. They will become sort of like a central hub for those rural communities. It will also free us up to be able to do some work on the neighboring playing field. So between that and the playing field has some issues with drainage and so on, to allow for the field to be usable most times of the year, and there are some holes and so on the field to be leveled off and that kind of thing.
All right, before Jumaane take you into the budget allocation, I just want to finish with that part of the island. The silk cotton tree and we're talking road network here. The only access...
Moriah area?
Yes.
Moriah
so if you had to get to Bloody Bay, then the road must be accessible. There is that concern that tree will eventually cross the road, Mr. Chief Secretary, because everybody afraid silk cotton tree. Nobody ain't cutting it down because they're afraid the family go dead. But we're not going there. We're talking about access or diverting or detouring. Is there any plan to treat with that? Because I'm coming from up there not so long ago, and a hog plum tree fall along in the road, and nobody could pass. There's no way to get to and from. Except we turn back and go to Charlottesville. Let's speak to that quickly, and we get into the budget, which Mr. Cox will take you. What plans are there? Are there any, if any, what are the plans?
Well, there are two sets of plans. So we don't want to destroy the silk cotton tree, not just because of the speculations and I don't know, the cultural fears surrounding the silk cotton tree, but it is part of our green heritage. And silk cotton trees are important to cultures all over the world, not just in Tobago, but the wider Caribbean, in Latin America, West Africa. Silk cotton trees are important. And so there are two things we're looking at. One, when we had the town hall meeting in Moriah, the villagers suggested that there may be a way to pass a road down by the playing field, getting into Castara, the playing field in Moriah, to Castara. That will be a massive task because you're talking about virgin lands and territories and being able to navigate through that part of the rainforest to Castara. Also, the Division of Infrastructure, they have started some design plans. It's still in the design phase. Design plans to more or less have a roadway that sort of cantilevers around the tree to allow the tree roots to keep going. But because that is still at the design phase, I can't have a costing for it as yet until the design is complete. But that's just at the design phase. So we're looking at those two options because we know pretty soon we will have to do something about the road infrastructure to get Moriah into Runnymede, into Castara. At present, as you say, it's one road there, except you pass through the link road to Roxborough, and you know we have some challenges there in the rainforest, or you pass the Hermitage Road from Lansome into Charlottesville. But coming from the capital Scarborough into Castara is pretty much a one-shot into that area.
Okay. Mr. Augustine, as we talk in this, now there's the Ministry of Works and Transport. And just shifting into the budget allocation, this 763 million, which is kind of consistent over the years if you look at the range in which the allocation that comes from or that would be spent through ministries and statutory bodies in Tobago. For a situation like this, for example, you mentioned the Division of Infrastructure, but what is the breakdown in terms of that 763 million? Are you privy to exactly which ministry would be spending which amount throughout the fiscal year?
And I'm glad you asked that question because I have consistently almost always refused to acknowledge these so-called monies to be spent by ministries in Tobago. Granted, we have new members of parliament, and it will be their job to advocate for ministries to expend their budgets allocated for Tobago in Tobago. But over the years, really and truly, a so-called allocation is made, and we are told that this is to be spent by ministries in Tobago. And that's not measurable, and the ministries seldom spend any. That must be for areas that are not under the 5th schedule, areas to which the responsibility is retained by the central government. So, for example, that includes national security, now Homeland Security and Ministry of Defense. You go up to Camp Signal Hill, national security can't tell you last time they spent a cent on that building. I every year coming to Independence have to send THA workers with THA resources and THA money to do some patchwork. But the state there, I wish they could carry you there, and I mean they can't because of security reasons, but I wish they could carry you there and show you the state of that facility. That's a central government responsibility that has been ignored largely for donkey years. And so I don't really focus on what these ministries ought to spend in Tobago. I focus on what is allocated to the Tobago House of Assembly, because by law, by practice, by the Dispute Resolution Commission, the THA ought to be given between 4.03% and 6.9% of the budget as our allocation, our annual allocation. This year, that allocation to the Tobago House of Assembly is the highest it has ever been. Based on a budget presentation, it's at 5%. The highest previously was at 4.37% of the allocation. In fact, if you wish, I could go back with the numbers over the years to you. If I should go back with the numbers over the last perhaps 5 or so years, I could tell you if we go to 2020 we were given essentially 4.28% of the budget. 2021, the THA was given 4.30% of the budget. 2022, we were given 4.51%. So my apologies, 4.51% is the highest. And you know, 2021, what was happening there? 2021, or fiscal 2022, which started in October of 2021. They know they had an election coming up in December of that fiscal year. So we got 4.51%. 2023 fiscal year, we got 4.37%. 2024, 4.37%. And fiscal 2025, we got 4.35%. So for fiscal 2026, it's at 5%. It is the highest allocation the THA has ever been given. Of course, the central government will make claims that there are monies to be spent by ministries in Tobago. There is, generally, if we are to gauge by what happened over the last 10 years of PNM rule, you don't know what they spent it on. You don't know how much of that is spent, how much is not spent. As I said, that's for things like national security and other areas that are retained by the central government. It includes the Met Office, for example, Airports Authority, and statutory bodies that have to do work in Tobago that's controlled by the central government, hopefully with a different relationship with new MPs. That means that the THA, myself, and those of us who lead the island of Tobago will have the opportunity to peek into what they do with that allocation and be able to direct them in terms of where the needs are. Because if they take direction from us, then we know that we should have a fire substation, for example, going north of the island.
But you did say that this allocation, and not just the 763 million, but generally speaking, after the budget was presented, that is a new level of cooperation and respect.
Yes.
I guess naturally accountability would come into the fray.
Of course, and I hope that continues. Because, as I said, I have only been Chief Secretary from December of 2021. I could only measure things based on my experience. This is the third Prime Minister I am experiencing. I experienced 2 Prime Ministers before. One for most of the 4 years and one for a day. And now I have the third Prime Minister here, some months in office since April.
Right.
Since April. If I go based on the experience I have had, and things continue as they did before, it will mean that which is set aside for the central government to do work in Tobago, we will be unable to measure it. Notwithstanding that, we have been experiencing a different kind of relationship, different levels of communication. We have new MPs who are stronger advocates for Tobago. and all things being equal, we should be able to get some influence over the central government and what they do with that which is retained by the central government for expenditure in Tobago. But insofar as the THA, our real responsibility, which is the 5th schedule, we were allocated 5%. And I just went through the percentages from fiscal 2020 to present. If you look at fiscal 2020 to present, this, as a matter of fact, if you look at the 44-year history of the THA, 5% is the highest allocation the THA has ever received.
Mr. Chief Secretary, there are those who are saying that this blanket 3.7 billion for Tobago was not disaggregated in that CPEP, URP.
It does not need to be disaggregated.
One minute.
Let me tell you why. Okay. If you look at the THA Act, because you see, my thing is, if you want to lead this island, you must understand the Tobago House of Assembly Act. The Tobago House of Assembly Act is clear. The Tobago House of Assembly Act says that the THA's allocation must be placed in the fund account. There is no requirement in law for the central government to disaggregate and to tell you along line items where the monies should go or how money should be spent. The law is clear. Give the THA its allocation, put it in the fund account. When it gets into the fund account, the Tobago House of Assembly decides its priorities. The Tobago House of Assembly decides where it places the money and for what use. And I've already made it clear that our employees in CPEP and URP, they remain a priority for the Tobago House of Assembly. As a matter of fact, prior to the last THA elections, people campaign and say, no, well, Farley and them will come and cut CPEP and URP. They will cut it out. Because I came on this very station, I believe in an interview with you, Brother B, and I was making the point about our very large, perhaps a gargantuan allocation to current expenditure primarily for salaries and not enough for development spend. What has happened? Farley and team, we have increased CPEP and URP salaries. Before those in Trinidad got an increase, we have been improving the working conditions for them in terms of time off and maternity and all of those particular benefits, ensuring that they are there for them. And so we have gone counter what they said we will do. So the evidence is clear. We have no intention of sending CPEP and URP home. Also for Tobagonians to note, the madness you saw in Trinidad with ghost gangs and all sorts of story. Trinidad, CPEP and URP was operated differently to Tobago. We pay our CPEP and URP workers directly. In Trinidad, they had a practice of hiring contractors to run the CPEP and the URP program. That's not how it is run in Tobago. So we have always had a much more sustainable model than Trinidad had. And so our workers can be comforted in knowing that we will continue to support them.
Mr. Chief Secretary, for transparency and accountability's sake, as you said, there's no disaggregation and there's no need for it. However, we have grown accustomed to hearing what is the amount for recurrent expenditure, how much for CPEP and URP. We had Mr. Richards and the Secretary of Finance here, Ms. Roberts, and they gave us the figure of 18 million for URP, 9 million for CPEP. Recurrent expenditure may not be the same as last year, which was 2.376 billion. Now, when we subtract that from the 3.7 billion, it really gives you little or very little to wiggle with development with that figure. Let's speak to that, because that needs clarity in terms of from you as to, you're saying that we could do our own disaggregation, which you will. You're free to do so. However, the public is waiting to hear from you.
So we have always done that, done our own disaggregation and our own moving. In fact, what we are accustomed to receiving for CPEP and URP customarily is not enough. But we pay the bill. So how do we pay the bill? Every year in November, we come to the people of Tobago and we provide the priority listing. So in other words, we have a sort of rebudgeting exercise that happens. 2 days post the carnival, when everybody perhaps resting, the team will be in retreat with me for 2 days, including administrators. And coming out of that, we then will return to Tobagonians and we will say, this is how we disaggregate the spend. This is how we are going to actually utilize the monies that we have received this year. This is how we plan to perhaps even raise some additional funding. And so every year when you see us build roads, pay the workers, fix school repair, pay for DATAS, and I'll give you an example. DATAS, which is the program that provides for scholarships and bursaries for tertiary level students, on average gets about $500,000 on average every fiscal year. And we spend upwards of $5 million in that program every single year, which means that we have been doing a very good job of moving monies around and prioritizing Tobago's development and determining that, look, this is a priority, so we need to spend some more on it. I'll give you a next example. We perhaps might get $5 million to pay gratuities to contracted teachers. On average, we spend every year over $10 million on gratuities and increments to teachers in the space. In other words, we made it a priority, and so we shift monies to pay for that. That's what governing is about. So when you receive your gratuities, when you see that you get through on the DATAS program, when you see a big new road is built to the airport, when you see paving is happening on your street, or you see a $20 million is spent on school repairs, and can I tell you, last fiscal, when we spent $20 million on school repairs, then Minister of Education in Trinidad, Gatsby Dolly, was also spending $20 million on school repairs. Imagine that, Tobago and Trinidad spending the identical sums on school repairs, while they have hundreds of schools, and we ain't even crossed 10. So in terms of secondary schools. So you have to appreciate that it's about the government determining what the priorities are for the island and spending it in places that ensures that the people of Tobago benefits.
Okay.
Right. You use an analogy. Well, you would say every $100 spent nationally.
Yes. So you want to know what that analogy is now?
Right. And now it's $5
of every 100. So we move from $4.37 to $5 out of every 100. And I always use it because there sometimes is this tendency by my friends and family in Trinidad to say, well, Tobago getting too much money. We're sending all our money to Tobago. Tobago have less schools than Trinidad. We're sending all our money to Tobago. And I always use it so that they have an appreciation for the fact that for every $100 spent on development in the country, we only getting $5. We're not even getting $10. We're not even getting $6. And so the lion's share of development spent in the country continues to be in Trinidad. And no, we are not advocating that they should spend $50 in Tobago. We are a smaller geographic space. Our population is now around 5.1 to 5.2% of the national population. So no, we're not advocating for us to get $50 of every $100. Okay. I just want to show that our ask is always reasonable. This year we asked for $5.80 out of every $100. That's what we asked for, and we got $5.
Very good.
Right? So we didn't get the $5.80 we asked for. We got, the $5.90 was 5.9. The $5.90 we asked for, we got $5.
Okay.
It is small, but it's still better than the $4.37.